Okay, before I tell you the story, here's my disclaimer on Donald Trump. I've known him for 25 years, haven't spoken to him in 7 or 8 years, but I in no way endorse him for president in any way, shape, or form. Matter of fact, if you knew what I know about him, you wouldn't even, people have no idea what he's capable of. He is not a good person in any way. But anyway, so that's my disclaimer. But I did have some wild experiences around him and his orbit. So one time in the late 90s, I was at a fundraiser at Mar-a-Lago, and we had to be there because he was a client. And there were like 1,000 people at this fundraiser. And I was in the ballroom, which is a huge room. It's like the main room at Mar-a-Lago. And I'm looking across the room, and I see this guy. Looks like he's got white hair. He looks like he's 90 years old, and he's serving wine on a tray. Now, I'm not a wine drinker necessarily. I don't know much about wine. Most of the wine I've had in my life has come out of a box, from 7-Eleven. But I was fascinated because he was so old. And I'm thinking, these parties, these fundraisers go on for a long time. He's going to be exhausted. So anyway, I made my way over to him, and I said, "Oh, what kind of wine do you have?" And he said, "Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's Mondavi, 1995, Mondavi." And again, he was probably 90-something years old. That's what he looked like. He was very formal. And I said, "Oh, okay." He said, "Sir, would you like to?" And I said, "Oh, sure." And so he gave me the glass, and he waited for me to test the wine. So I did, and I said, "Wow, that's actually pretty good." And he said, "Well, thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir." He says, 95 was a very good year for Mondavi. And I said, "Oh, well, who knew?" And I talked to him for a little bit, and I had another glass, and we were standing around there. And I said, I'm sorry. He's a super nice guy. And I said, I'm so sorry. I said, forgive my manners. I said, "My name is Steve. Mr. Trump is a client, and been a client for a long time, and so I'm here." And he said, "Oh, yes, sir." And I said, "My name is Steve Siebold." And he said, "Oh, yes, Mr. Siebold. Yes, sir, Mr. Siebold." He shook my hand and he says, "My name is Robert Mondavi." I said, "You gotta be." I said, "Like the guy in the bottle? I mean, you're Robert Mondavi, the most famous winemaker in the world?" He said, "Oh, that's very kind of you, sir. Thank you so much." I said, "You're seriously Robert Mondavi, really?" And he goes, "Oh, yes, sir." I said, "Mr. Mondavi, no disrespect intended, but why are you here serving wine?" And he says, "Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir." He says, "Well, Mr. Trump has been a very good client for many years. As a matter of fact, his parents were very good clients for many, many years. So whenever he asks us to come, well, then we come. Yeah. And I said, "But why are you personally serving the wine?" He said, I'll never forget this as long as I live. He said, "Because that's our business. That's what we do." And I talked to him for about another, 10 minutes or so, walked away, and I thought, this is probably the most humble giant I have ever met in my entire life. I never forgot that. And I looked it up, and he was like 92 or 93, I forget now. But he died maybe 5-6 years later. But Robert Mondavi, you never knew who was going to show up at Mar-a-Lago, at Trump's Mar-a-Lago. That was that was the fun thing about the whole thing. You just never knew what was going to happen. So that's probably my wildest story.